presently in the UK. Two of my sons went through British school. So if there is any supporter of the British school here in Manila, it would be me. But I am also a parent, and I cannot listen to this story without thinking, there but to the grace of God go my sons. So I suppose I do not want to let too much emotion come into these proceedings. And so let me just ask a very simple question. Mr. Mann, what happened here? What happened here? How was a young boy pushed to such an extent that he felt psychologically unable to continue with his life? How did this happen? And why all this confusion about the report? The non-appearance of the report after it had been done? The abridging, the editing of the report? Now I am shocked to find out that the mother has yet to get a copy of the report from the school. So let me keep it open-ended that way. So allow me to explain what happened. Why did Liam commit suicide? Why did he kill himself? How was it? What were the circumstances that preyed upon him, that made him feel that he could not go on while he was attending your school? And why was the handling of the report this way? And where is Mrs. Mann? Why is she run away? You cannot fault us for thinking that. So please, hopefully you can provide some answers to these questions.
I've spent some time describing the process the school went through to deal with Liam, the second student, over the same issue of the submission of a theory of knowledge essay that contravened academic honesty rules and laws. I would request at this time to ask Mr. Platts to talk to you about both the conversation he had with Natalie Mann prior to dealing with the two students and the regulations to which we are held by the IB diploma. He's a far more knowledgeable member of staff at the school about these things than I. So I could defer to Mr. Platts for at least that part of it, and then I will continue to answer your question when he's completed his response.
Good morning, my name is Brian Platts. I'm one of the deputy head teachers. I'm responsible, among other things, for Key Stage 5, which is the IB program. My discussion with Mrs. Mann before she spoke with Liam.
Perhaps what would be more appropriate, let us do it chronologically and start with, I suppose, the suspicion that plagiarism has been committed and what actions you took to correct that or to punish that plagiarism.
Okay, with all due respect, I wouldn't use the word punish. That's not a word that I, as an educator, or as a British school, regularly use. But I do understand why you used it. On Wednesday the 4th of February, Natalie approached me with news that a student had looked like they had plagiarised a TOK essay. For the TOK essay, students are allowed one draft. After that draft, they are then given feedback from their TOK teacher. They would then be given a few weeks to act upon that draft and submit their final TOK essay. At this point in my discussions with Mrs. Mann, this student was not Liam. As her line manager, she came to speak to me about what we should do. the IB regulations, and if you allow me, the IB advise schools in their policies about plagiarism, and this is what they say. Schools should not view plagiarism as a trivial offence with only minor consequences. It must be viewed as a serious academic transgression with a community attitude that shows no tolerance and imposes severe penalties when it is discovered. As a school, and you have mentioned, or it has been mentioned this morning, that we undergo a process of reflection. We believe life is about learning. I'm sure everyone in this room has made errors, misjudgments, and mistakes in their lives. I think it's the job of us as teachers and educators to help young people understand those transgressions and to learn from them. That's why we have a policy of reflection. Also, we have a policy of reflection because the IB Learner Profile tells us that one of the 10 attributes is reflection. We also have something called learning power, which children went through BSM will be very well acquainted with. The IB, as I stated, sees this as a very serious offence. So the first thing that we talked about was that the students should be made aware that if this was passed to the IBO, it would be serious, and the possible consequences of that would be a failure to attain their diploma. We agreed that this student, and I'll remind you that at this point it wasn't Liam, would redo another essay. As I mentioned before, the first essay is given feedback. So the essay that Liam would have been asked to have done would have been an essay which he would have then got feedback on. That would not have been the final essay. But that's another issue. This student would be given an opportunity to disclose any other incidences of plagiarism. My role, and I think the school's role, is to protect our students. As you rightly said, plagiarism is common. It's not something that obviously is condoned, but it's common. And really our job as schools is to try and prevent that before it gets to that stage. And we have things in place to educate and to train students about what is academic honesty and what is academic dishonesty. In fact, we had 2 sessions in September and October of that previous year on academic honesty, one specifically on reference writing, on referencing. But one of my main points of the discussion with Mrs. Mann was, I want to make sure that this student hasn't plagiarised with other pieces of work that have already been submitted. So I asked Mrs. Mann to give them an opportunity to disclose of any other forms of plagiarism. Because as I said before, I see our job as really being that buffer and protection for students in terms of making grave mistakes to do with academic dishonesty. And as students in...
Mr. Black, may I? Of course. This sounds to me like a red herring. I think that the committee knows how common plagiarism is, as you yourself admitted. Gosh, ever since I was in grade school, I would hear classmates, I myself, once a year maybe, ask a classmate during the exam, what's the answer to number 6? Or somebody else asked me what my answer was to number 5. So this is part of your values formation process, which attends any school. Every school has got to be able to teach their children, their students, what the right thing to do and what are the wrong things to do. And our curiosity stems from the fact that you tend to focus on how to stop plagiarism when it is not the issue here. I think that the committee would like to know, how did the teacher handle this? Did she overreact? Did she push a child, barely 18, to the brink of jumping to his death from a 6-story parking lot building? And that's what you should have identified and focused on. Now I understand that the penalty for plagiarism on a first offense is a 15-minute detention. Am I correct? It's not. What is it?
Excuse me. We have a system for sanctions in the school. We deal with any transgression on an individual matter. Once you get into the IB, it really is a partnership with students, speaking to students, finding out what happened. Even as the IB state in their documentation, they have different sanctions for different types of academic dishonesty. There's a difference between missing a quotation and between taking something to an exam.
I'm not talking about the IB, I'm talking only about British school. What are the penalties
Well, again,
for British school?
we have a standard set of guidelines to help teachers, mainly at key stage 3.
Mr. Black, you don't answer my question. It's very simple. What is the penalty for plagiarism or attempted plagiarism in British school?
Excuse me, Senator, I'd like to read you a
Yes, please.
Plagiarism is attempting to pass off your own work as someone else's, and within the school it is viewed an extremely serious offence. Students who are suspected of plagiarism are reported to the primary or senior heads. If they have been found to have cheated, are likely to be suspended.
Could you speak into the mic, Mr. McMahon?
And if-
Bring it closer to you.
I beg to apologise. Where did I get to? Do I need to start with? No, okay. If they have found to have cheated, they are likely to be suspended and they will gain no marks for the piece of work in question. If the assignment was for an external assessment or moderation, for example, the IB Diploma Theory of Knowledge essay, the possible consequences is that the students will fail the entire course. So that indicates the extreme end that Mr. Platts is referring to of the way in which plagiarism is dealt with.
In this particular instance, Liam committed, I think, what lawyers would call attempted plagiarism.
I think it would be fair to say that we view any submitted document that leaves a child's hand or a student's hand to a teacher as a submitted document, and therefore we have to treat it as plagiarism itself.
Attempted in the sense that plagiarism does not really become a crime until it is published.
I think there's a difference between violations of the copyright law and the intellectual property law and the definition of plagiarism in an academic context. I think there's a distinction.
All right.
And it's the school really which determines whether or not plagiarism occurs within its schools, because the school is a private institution, and when the parent brings his child to the school, they submit themselves to the standards and rules of that school, the values of that school.
Agreed. All right. And in this particular instance, you know, I just remember a little file, the criminal law, where you've got attempted murder, frustrated murder, and consummated murder.
Yes,
And in this particular instance, regardless of whether it is a regulation or it is a part of the civil or criminal code, it's not yet consummated.
well, if I may,
It's not yet final, it's just a draft.
no, attempted means the perpetrator has initiated a criminal act but was not able to complete all the acts. Frustrated means the perpetrator was able to complete all the criminal acts, but because of an intervention beyond his control, he was not able to complete the act. For example, I shoot at you and you have a vest.
Frustrated.
It's frustrated. Now, if all my acts
were performed and I was able to consummate the offense. It's a consummate act. In this instance,
If I die, it's consummated. If I live, it's still frustrated.
that's correct. That's correct. So, in this instance, if the school determines that if a first draft is deemed to be a consummated act, and my understanding is, correct me, Mr. Mann, if I'm wrong, a first draft is deemed by the school to constitute plagiarism, and that the students were well aware of it.
All right. I agree with you. Thank you so much for your elucidation.